And at the beginning of it all, a man receives a photo of his future wife, and is immediately enchanted by her beauty. Meanwhile, the girl goes to her grandfather to complain about an article she saw in the newspaper, which involves their family. In this, Kirigaya shows that he doesn't care at all about it, and then, Yoshino draws his attention to the last part of the article, where it talks about the grandchildren of the two Yakuza families getting closer, and so, the press began to believe that the two would end up getting married soon. In this, she asks if the article was mentioning her, and then, Kirigaya says yes. After all, they couldn't be talking about anyone else. And upon hearing this, the girl starts to complain even more, and says that she has never even met this grandson from Tokyo, in this case, Mayama. And as for her grandfather, Kirigaya finds it strange that he has never heard his granddaughter talk about relationships even though she is already 17 years old, and precisely for this reason, he decided to look for a good match for her on his own. At this, Yoshino asks if she has known Mayama for a long time, to which Kirigaya reassures her, and says that she has known him for a long time. After all, he would never recommend any man to her. However, Yoshino makes it clear that he does not intend to get married. And then, Kirigaya advises her to at least go and meet the guy, and besides, she can take this opportunity to go live in Tokyo and learn the local dialect. However, Yoshino continues to refuse, and says that she doesn't even know the face and name of the suitor he is trying to set her up with, to which Kirigaya says that the guy's name is Mayama Kirishima, but upon hearing this somewhat strange name, Yoshino asks if that would be his gangster name, but Kirigaya corrects her, saying that that is his real name, and besides, the boy is just a high school student, so he is not a Yakuza yet. Having said that, he again tells her to go to Tokyo to meet the guy, and in the end, she ends up giving in, and goes to meet Mayama. But before meeting her suitor himself, Yoshino is approached by Takusa, the leader of the Mayama family. She is enchanted by his beauty, calling him a hot uncle, and as for Takusa, he says that she looks a lot like Rinji, and believes that everyone should say the same thing to her. Yoshino confirms that she does, and says that people often joke with her, saying that she is the female version of Rinji. Having said that, she tries to speed things up, asking to meet Mayama soon. And upon hearing this, Takusa says that the boy has been after her all this time, so he takes her to see more of the place, and on the way, he says that everything is ready for her to live there with him. Upon hearing this, Yoshino explains that she is still not sure whether she will live there or not, so there is still a chance that she will end up refusing the offer. And upon remembering this, Mayama apologizes for having rushed into things, and says that there is no problem at all if she wants to refuse his offer, especially since he understands that it may sound forced to plan a wedding between two young people who have never even met each other. And precisely for this reason, Mayama believed that she would end up refusing to marry him, but seeing that she at least agreed to go meet him, that was enough to make him very happy. And the next day, she transfers to the same school as him, and says that she was a little insecure about it, as she wasn't sure if she would be smart enough to study at the same school as him. And in the middle of the conversation, she calls him Kirishima-kun, to try to be a little more affectionate. However, he becomes slightly embarrassed, and asks her to just call him Kirishima. She does as he asks, and Kirishima takes her to the classroom where she will have her classes, and then heads to his classroom. As she watches him leave, Yoshino is impressed by his politeness, even though he grew up in a Yakuza family, and then she feels more relieved, since the boy seems to be a normal and kind person. And already in the classroom, she is approached by 3 other students, who are curious to know the connection she has with Mayama, since they saw her talking to him that morning. In this, Yoshino explains that their grandparents are very close, and as a result she ended up meeting him too. However, one of the girls decides to be more direct, and asks if she is his girlfriend, and then, Yoshino says no. However, she makes it clear that her grandparents' plan is precisely to make them stay together. And upon hearing this somewhat confused answer, the girl hits the table, and asks her to be more direct. However, Yoshino remains silent, and so the girls end up giving up on the conversation and leaving. And when meeting him during break time, Yoshino comments on how he is very popular at that school. However, he doesn't seem to know that. After all, people usually just greet him and nothing more, especially because the students already know that he is the grandson of a Yakuza. And upon hearing this, Yoshino asks if people aren't afraid of him, and Kirishima says no. After all, the police show up quickly when a Yakuza does something bad to someone. However, she asks if he doesn't feel uncomfortable with everyone staring at him all the time, and Kirishima says that he hadn't even stopped to think about it. However, he says this while looking at her with a scary look, which would later make her lose sleep at dawn. She decides to go get some water to calm down, but on the way, she sees Kirishima through the window, carrying a shirt soaked in blood. The next day at school, she arranges to go with him to buy some household items, and then, he responds coldly, saying that he can only go at night. At this, she remembers the previous night, when she saw him with a shirt soaked in a liquid that she thought was blood, but after thinking a little more, Yoshino tries to convince herself that she is thinking too much and creating things in her head that do not exist. And as she continues walking through the school hallways, she notices a group of girls talking badly about her, calling her loud. However, one of the girls goes further and starts spreading a false rumor, saying that Yoshino works as a prostitute to pay off a debt she owes the Miyama family. After that, she goes shopping with Kirishima, but in the middle of the trip, she remembers that she needs to withdraw money, and so, Yoshino asks him to wait while she goes to take care of it. But when she is alone, she is approached by 3 guys, who begin harassing her and calling her a night worker, just for a change. In this, she tries to mislead the men, saying that they are confusing her, but soon after, she realizes that it is actually a key, something she had never experienced in the city she lived in. In this, the boys begin to drag her to a dark alley, and even hearing her say that she was accompanied, the boys continue to take her with them, until suddenly, Kirishima appears there, and says that Yoshino is accompanied by him. However, the boys decide to pick a fight with him anyway. Kirishima then lays down the first boy, and his friends call him a jerk, but since words are not yet capable of causing physical harm, Kirishima remains standing and begins to beat up the other boys as well. But when he sees that the boys are already redder than a tomato at the fair, Yoshino asks Kirishima to stop there, but before doing so, he advises the boys not to mess with Yoshino anymore, and says that if they try to come back for revenge, they will all end up dead. And after finishing the message, he asks Yoshino to leave. And in that, he explains that she had never been approached before because everyone knew that she was the granddaughter of a Yakuza, and besides, she was always accompanied by a man who didn't seem to be an ordinary citizen, which made people even more afraid of trying anything. That said, he asks her to start being more careful. After all, it is no longer Osaka, her hometown. As for Yoshino, she asks him to wait before continuing. After all, if anyone sees him all bloody, they will certainly call the police. And upon hearing this, he takes off his bloody sweatshirt, leaving his tattoos visible. At this, he sees that Yoshino was shocked by his tattoos, and so, he promises that he will be more direct with her next time. Having said that, he starts to bring his hand closer to her face. However, Yoshino hits his hand by reflex, and apologizes for it right after, but Kirishima smiles, and says that he likes women like her, who put him in a doormat position. And upon hearing this, she doesn't understand anything, and then, Kirishima decides to be more direct, and says that she is more bland than he imagined, which ended up making him get sick of her very quickly. However, he doesn't blame her, as he ended up creating exaggerated expectations about her. And as for what she will do, Kirishima says that she can stay there. However, she will continue to be a worthless woman to him. And then, he asks if she can at least generate some money for them, in which case, he suggests that she sell her body, since that is the only thing of value she has. That said, Kirishima leaves her free to return to Osaka and say word for word what he told her. After all, if things get out of hand, it will amuse him a lot. And when leaving him behind, Yoshino goes to her locker at school, and when she opens it, she finds her things soaked in mud, and realizes right away that this is what people call bullying, and soon after, she hears a group of girls laughing at her hidden. At this, she begins to consider returning to Osaka, but soon puts her mind back in place, and decides to stand firm. And suddenly, she receives a call from Kirigaya, and during the conversation, he notices something wrong, and asks if she is getting along with Miyama, at which point, she remains silent, and then, he asks her to hold on for at least one more year, regardless of how much they humiliate her, because he wants her to just make Miyama fall in love with her and come back home. After all, this is the best way she has to get revenge on him. And with that said, he tells one of those stories where he got dumped. In this case, the 3 girlfriends he had at the time discovered his betrayal and threw him in the river as a way of getting revenge. And upon hearing this, Yoshino is impressed by the amount of trash boys around her. And so, she decides to play the game according to Kirishima's rules, and she starts by approaching him with a kidney in a bag, showing that she will no longer be that tasteless girl he had said. And besides that, she addresses the other girls in the room, and promises that she will drag the souls of everyone around her to hell with her, and upon noticing the violent tone in her words, Kirishima grabs her by the arm and tells her that he loves her. And as for Takusa, he receives a mysterious phone call, and warns his partners about the annoying problem he has just become aware of. And that was another video. If you liked it and want more videos like this, subscribe, and leave your like. Here on the screen there is another video for you. Until next time.